Hey everyone, Derek Sabori here with the Underswell, and I'm here with McKenzie Wilson, and we're going to do something fun today. We're going to do a little interview. We're going to flip the script, and instead of me doing the interviewing, Mackenzie's going to interview me. And Mackenzie has been working with me for about a year now. She started off as an intern. Now she's basically working full-time here at the Underswell, so I'm really excited. She's got some great questions lined up, and we just want to kind of tell the story about the Underswell, what we do, how it came to be, and kind of what thoughts I have on it for the future. So, Mackenzie, you drafted some questions. Let's go ahead and dive in.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Derek. As you mentioned, this is our anniversary. I believe we're coming on 7 years for the Underswell. So if you could give me some details on that, I would love to hear the background of the story of how the Underswell got started.
Yeah, it is 7 years this year, which is actually really hard for me to believe. It was 2015 when I first filed a fictitious business name for the Underswell. So the company was born, and there's been a few iterations. It's evolved since then in terms of how I run the business, what we're trying to do. I started off as a sole proprietor, so just really it was Derek Sabori doing business as the Underswell. But this year, it's been exciting. Kind of we hit a milestone and a landmark when I formed an LLC for the company. So now it's an official company on its own, the Underswell LLC, doing business as the Underswell. And it's been great because, I started off just doing regular consulting, and we've moved obviously from consulting to more training. So I'm not really doing projects necessarily for brands and companies anymore. It really is about training, reaching others, teaching others about sustainability, all that comes along with it. And as I think you know, and a lot of people might already know, that all of this really stemmed from the teaching that I was doing in the college. So when I was developing the courses, we built a certificate program. I built out 3 semesters worth of content. And I really wanted to get that to the professional space. I really wanted to bring it into companies, and we've accomplished that, right? We're working with some great brands, some world-class brands, and I've been able to get that same training that I was offering to students in the classroom, get it into corporate spaces and brand spaces and retail spaces on a global level. So it's been really, really exciting to go from that sole proprietorship, doing consulting, to really building a training program and having a good company that we can really move forward with. So in a nutshell, that's kind of how what the pathway has been.
Right. Yeah. Well, and thank you for sharing that. You've been in the space a long time. You have a lot of experience working with brands. But I'm curious to know, why and when did you decide to pursue sustainability specifically as a career and as a passion?
Yeah, let's see. I mean, my career started at Volcom. That's really was my first job, my first official job out of college. And it was a few years in that I found this as where I had my moment, where I decided this is what I was going to do and what I was going to dedicate my career to. I knew that I wanted to be a part of this movement. I knew there was this movement happening and I wanted to be a part of it. It just felt really exciting. But officially, it was really probably around 2005 or 2006. I was at Volcom, and I was in charge of the product side. So I was managing the merchandising and design department, originally for all sectors or all segments. Eventually, we split that off, and I just was managing men's and the youth department. But we started building this little eco club, we called it the Vecological Society, because we were getting suppliers come in, namely somebody who I still was doing work with even just now, Isaac Nicholson, who at the time was selling sort of eco fabrics and materials and fiber usage, preferred fibers that nobody was talking about back then. Recycled synthetics, so recycled polyester or organic cotton. Bamboo back then was still kind of cool. Hemp, of course. And I remember just seeing these come in, just going, why do I not already know this? That's always been the question that stuck with me, is why do I not already know this? Mm-hmm. And we also, so as we started to see those things come in, we tried to put them into the line. We got really excited about them. We started saying, hey, we need to change some culture here at the organization at Volcom. And we started this little eco club. And there were a handful of us that came together to try to create this little movement. Somehow, McKenzie, I got nominated to be the head of this eco club, the Ecological Society. And it was funny because the more that people, because I was really passionate about it, I was really excited about it, and perhaps nobody else wanted the responsibility of it either. But I was excited about it, and the more I learned, I think the more that people kind of considered, well, then Derek's the expert, but I wasn't. But the more they looked to me for answers, the more I went and got the answers, and so I just became more well-versed and better. But during that little club that we had, we used to do these lunch and learns, and we did a movie screening one day, and we brought in, rented An Inconvenient Truth, screened that there, we watched it, and after watching that, my life was changed. That was my first, sort of climate change documentary that I saw, and if you haven't seen it, it's a really important one. There's been a sequel to it, a follow-up, and at this point, there are many more documentaries. You can get them everywhere on climate change and sustainability. But in the early 2000s, that was really a big deal, and I just remember that same thought. By then, I had been in the business for about 10 years. I'd gone back to school for my MBA, so I had plenty of college behind me. I had many years of experience at that time, and nobody had talked to me about any of that stuff. And it really struck a chord with me. And so I remember watching sort of the credits go by and deciding that this is what I want to do with my career. This is what I want to contribute and kind of give myself to, if you will. I didn't want to leave I loved being at that brand Volcom. I loved being in the action sports space. So I didn't want to leave almost in a selfish way. I decided, you know what, I want to make change here in this company, because if we can do it here, then hopefully that'll change other brands and keep the industry moving forward. There was another guy at the time doing a lot of great work. Frank Skura was his name. He was building this coalition called the Action Sports Environmental Coalition, ASEC. And so there was an opportunity to be a part of that movement and just get involved. And it was really exciting to me. And so that was when I really decided and made my choice. And so it's been, a good amount of years since then, and I'm still pushing for it. So
yeah, that's awesome. I know, and I love hearing the story. I mean, it's just hearing all the experience and how it all comes together, and then how it connects to sustainability. It really, as someone who just recently graduated college, it's just so inspiring. And speaking of inspiration, so we talked about kind of how you got your start with sustainability, but what was the inspiration for the Underswell? Where'd you get the name? What were some of your main influences? Tell me a little about that.
it was really from this idea. It actually came from surfing and yoga, those two things, because even by then I was starting to do yoga. I had been turned on to yoga while at Volcom. Same thing, more lunch, kind of lunch activities. They were bringing in wellness programs, and I really got excited about yoga because it was something I could do while being injured I couldn't surf, so I started stretching out and doing yoga. But anyway, the more that evolved, and in surfing, there's this idea that it's not about the class that you go to, or it's not about the day that the waves are supposed to be really good and you paddle out. It's about all the prep work that it takes in between. And so not only does it's a practice, we call it, right? And so, but not only does it take practice in between, so it takes you kind of gearing up every day to be ready for that good day when all the elements switch on, the waves are great, the tide is right, that wave comes to you, you've got to be ready. And if you're out of sorts, you're going to blow it. And nobody wants to blow a good wave when they've got the opportunity to be on the set wave. But it's the idea of also, as I found, as you're practicing, preparing for that day, a lot of magic actually happens on those in-between days as well. There are days when I'll go out and go surfing and it's like, it doesn't even look that good, but it's not that crowded, so that's kind of nice. And you get out and you go, that was so fun. You have these magical days. And so I really started to think that, a lot of the ways that we can get better, it happens sort of on the sidelines, in the margins, sort of underneath the big events, underneath the big swell events that happen. It's like, no, it's kind of to me, I have the most fun, I think, surfing when it's not the big, great days. It's just sort of like mediocre because there's less crowds, there's less, you put less pressure on yourself as well. So I think it's the same with sustainability and with work. It's sort of like, what, if I can turn a little bit here, if I can turn that over there, if I can do something better over here, little by little, as opposed to just waiting and saying, well, I don't really want to do anything until we can do it all or do the great big project. So to me, it really felt the same. So I just like this idea of the under and of people, of everything coming together underneath the surface to really create something underneath that can really create change and be meaningful. So that's the Underswell.
Yeah, no, and that's so cool because it is, you mentioned the word practice, and it's kind of like practice in itself to me is almost like these small little incremental wins every day. Every day that you get a little bit better, it's like that's a win in and of itself. And I'm just curious, so what have been some of your biggest sustainability wins since you've started your career?
I think probably the biggest one for me, I mean, the most memorable, of course, was, when we talk about that early 2000s time frame, I spent about 5 years really becoming more and more passionate. And I continued to do the work sort of outside of my regular job because I wanted as our little collection of sustainable products sort of grew, I would piece it together and try to go take it to trade shows and try to show it off. And I would constantly be talking to people about it. And so I was sort of building this little movement outside of my real job, which was heading up the merchandising department, eventually building a planning and analysis department. And so for me, it was a real victory when I actually decided that, hey, this is actually what I want to do full time for the company. We didn't have that position. That position didn't exist. So to make that pitch to my boss then, who was the president of the company, who eventually went to become the CEO, and for him to say, hey, I'm open to it. I like the idea, because I was also starting to do a lot of communication internally, sending out newsletters and coordinating little events, and I know it was being well received by the company and by the team there. Mm-hmm. So for my boss then to say, hey, I'm open to building this new role for the company and for you. Let's just give it some time, see how it goes. And so I had to be patient and sort of keep proving that this could be a thing. And I think getting that title of Director of Sustainability, eventually becoming the Vice President of Global Sustainability, having one day the co-founder of the company, Richard Wolcott, kind of tapped me on the shoulder. We were at a sales meeting, and he tapped me, and I turned around, and he called me back, and he said, hey, an office just opened up upstairs. So it was 2 doors down from his office on the executive level. Mm-hmm. And he said, I want you to have that office. And that's not sort of, I don't intend for that to be a brag, but it was for me, and he knew it too. Hey, I want to send a good signal that sustainability is really important to this company. I love what you're doing, and we're going to build this together. So sort of that succession of those little victories, I think those weren't specific sustainability acts, but they were like culture. They were significant for building culture and sort of carving out a path and showing other brands that, hey, this was meaningful. And I think it had an effect, a ripple effect for sure. One of the last projects, jumping ahead, one of the last projects I worked on with Volcom I was doing a lot of work with them was our Farm to Yarn program. That's also a highlight. I think I'm really proud of that. That was a great one where we worked in partnership with Caring and the team at Volcom. I worked with Big Tony there at Volcom on this. We worked with farmers in India to identify organic cotton sources, work on farmer training, farmer education, women's empowerment programs, kind of health and community programs, but really making sure that we knew it was these communities, this group of farmers that we were buying the organic cotton from. We were tracing it all the way through, all the way to the t-shirts that we made. And so it was, this cool Farm to Yarn program. That was really a nice culmination of all the hard work we had done to do something that sort of rich and meaningful. But I think those are a few of the stories that always have really stood out in my mind. And of course, going out on my own to do sustainability consulting, that was a pretty big deal as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like you're someone who's not afraid to put yourself out there, like talking about starting a whole new position at the company, creating a sustainability position, especially back in, you said that was around like early 2000s, right? Yep.
Early 2000s was when I started to kind of push for it. I think I got the job in 2009, I think is when I finally got the first job.
Yeah, and that was, from my memory, it just seems like that was still kind of the quote unquote early days of sustainability. It being adopted on a large scale. It seemed like maybe the brands who were doing it were these mega brands, you know. So I think that's really cool that you don't seem like you're afraid to take on a challenge, and you don't seem like you're afraid to ask for something that you think is important. And I'm sure with that, there's probably challenges associated. So can you maybe tell me a little bit of some of the sustainability challenges you've had over the years?
Yeah, I think it's funny because even the idea that I said of, when people look to you as the expert, it becomes self-fulfilled. You become the expert. So I was getting better as more people looked to me, and then I received the position, and it sort of kind of snowballed from there. But I think a challenge did become, and this is exactly what we try to do today with the Underswell, was that I was more and more being looked at as the sustainability source for the company, or the voice. Even people would say, well, that I was the conscience of the company. And that wasn't, that was just something I would hear. I'm like, no, this cannot be it. Sustainability cannot just be about one person. And just because I have the title, I shouldn't be the only one. People shouldn't be deflecting the conversation over to me every time. And I really started to push for more and more people to come on board and to understand this language and to learn what I learned so that they could be experts as well. So it's funny, that's exactly what we try to do now, with our business model. But that was a bit of a challenge because it also gets a little bit lonely. So I had to really reckon with that and go, at first, I think I tried to own it and say, well, yes, I'm in charge of this, I'm in charge. But then the more I thought, I'm like, we're not going to get anywhere if it's only one or two people really handling sustainability. It has to be baked into everything and everyone. Caring was really good about using that language as well, of it being ingrained into the business and ingrained into the rhythm of the business, into the DNA of the organization. And that really resonated with me as well. So I think breaking through that expectation, I think, has always been a challenge. Dealing with cost, sort of ceilings and restraints that most brands still struggle with now. Just going, sustainability isn't cheaper, it's not faster, it's not easier. So constantly bumping up and working around that. I think that's a challenge. And also being asked for any sort of initiative that you're doing or a strategy or the sustainability program sort of on one page. Executives like to see things on one page. Like, well, can I get a one-page summary? And that's always a real challenge for me because there's just so much to unpack when we're talking about sustainability. So that idea of trying to boil it down, I think, has always been a challenge. But I think just, it's always a challenge because sustainability has always sort of lived, I think, on the sidelines. So the challenge is always to get it in and get it in. And so I think by the nature of just what it is, it's always challenging. And so I think the goal is to, kind of be resilient, stay, get after it, stay persistent. And you can't give up the fight because there's a long road. So maybe in that sense, there's always challenges. The whole thing is a challenge, but we got to keep a good face about it.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. And I mean, with that too, it seems like now that sustainability is becoming a major conversation piece at a lot of different companies, there's also this, you call it the yeah, but syndrome, where it's like, oh, organic cotton, yeah, but what about recycled poly, or, so on and so forth. So it seems like there's just this conversation going on now where it's almost not good enough. Not only is sustainability a challenge, but it's also, there's never anything that's good enough.
Yeah.
So for us, I mean, I think we always like to have maybe a more positive look on sustainability. So what are you most looking forward to in the future as it relates to sustainability or the Underswell?
I'm most looking forward to what we're working on right now. And it's this idea of bringing people together. So I think it took me, years to get to this point of this realization, basically of what I've just tried to articulate. And we've got this graphic, right, that I built, that it's this idea of really flipping the funnel. And I think getting sustainability education, insights, expertise to more and more people. I think from everywhere I've looked and everyone I've worked with, typically all of the sustainability knowledge, the conferences that are available, the reports, it usually funnels into one person, a small department, and that one person in that small department is tasked with trying to turn around and getting it out to the rest of the organization. It's very difficult because the business at the same time is just moving right along. And so it's this idea of flipping it over and giving that sustainability knowledge and insights and expertise to a wider portion of the company. So getting that out to everybody. So bringing everybody together, bringing all the different industries that are together, the surf industry, the outdoor industry, the snow industry, the fashion, getting them all in the same room, getting upper management together with middle management, together with the product team, together with marketing, together with the retail staff, together with distribution and logistics, getting everybody working together. I think we're working in too many different silos. And we've got this little phrase, right, that too few of us are working on too big of a problem in too many silos. So I think the thing I'm most excited about is really trying to flip the script a little bit, change the narrative, and get more people working on this together from across the room, and see if that will drive better action, because we're not doing enough fast enough. And I think that's everywhere you look, every headline. COP27 is going on right now. You look at the headlines and we're too far behind. So I feel like we have to do more urgently, and I think there's an opportunity to do that from the inside out of organizations. So can we bring people together? Can we democratize this so it's not reserved for the experts, and get more and more people on board with good education, good resources, so that they can really, make some change and create some good action in their companies?
Right. Yeah. And that's, like you said, it's what we're trying to do here. Part of our role is connecting those people. I had a professor who said that it's all about building bridges. So that seems like what we're trying to help companies do, is building these bridges to connect different departments, connect different roles, even connecting suppliers with the brands, and just creating more open communication. And I'm just wondering, is there anything that you would like to see more brands doing as it relates to sustainability, or anything that you think they could be doing better?
Yeah, I think educating, all the things we've kind of talked about, right? Getting education to more people in their companies, getting sustainability education, making it, and it becomes a sales pitch because this is what we offer, but it really is giving sustainability training to more people in different departments across the board, because every role plays a role in this, right? It's no matter what role you're in the company, you have a responsibility to drive forward these goals. So I would like to see more and more companies provide training for their people and to ingrain it into their business, so that the CEO is being influenced by the board, who is it being influenced by stakeholders and investors, and the customers are coming in, and we're all working on this together, but yet we're all, it's being ingrained into the business. And every meeting that you show up to should have a sustainability component, because I can almost guarantee no matter what meeting it is, there's a component in there that you can be talking about sustainability, which has many aspects, right? It's not just environmental. Sustainability is environmental, social. We can go look at the Sustainable Development Goals, all 17 of those goals, 169 targets. There's a good representation. You can start picking out one or two of those things for any meeting that you're in, for sure. So we just want to make it part of the business language, and get more and more companies thinking about the triple bottom line as opposed to just their bottom line.
Right. Yeah. And that, it's so funny you're saying it, but it makes me think of what you have said from the beginning, is this grilled cheese effect, where it's, pressure from top down, pressure from bottom up to make this delicious sandwich. And it goes back to you starting the role of VP of Global Sustainability. It's, kind of ingraining that into the leadership of the company, and also expanding that into all the different departments, and making sure everyone is aware and everyone knows the language and everyone feels comfortable talking about the topic. And we do talk about that through our courses and through the academy and things like that. So on that topic too, when I went through the course, one of my favorite lectures was the top social concerns and the top environmental concerns. And I'm just curious, from your perspective, what do you think are the biggest environmental concerns and the biggest social concerns?
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because what's funny is I've got my favorite mug, right? It depends the context of what we're looking at. But I do think that's a fair enough question. I think I always try to boil it down, because for companies, for brands, for clients that we're working with, there are so many issues that need to be tackled. There's a long list of environmental, a long list of social issues. But I really think if we had to boil it down, I think the biggest ones at sort of the tip of the spear, if you will, are greenhouse gas emissions. So emissions in your supply chain, traceability in your supply chain, understanding, knowing where everything comes from, where the materials come from, where they were sourced, how they were sourced, just having a lay of the land that goes all the way back to tier 4 for every part of your business can be very difficult to do, but you're not going to be able to tackle emissions, and you're not going to be able to tackle the last one, human rights issues, without that. So we have to make sure there are no, we're avoiding any human rights issues in our supply chains, and that's, of course, loaded, human trafficking, forced labor, discrimination, all sorts of issues come along with that, unpaid overtime, etc. But we need to address all of that, right? And we need to take care of people in our supply chains. We can't do that without good traceability. We can't make sure that they're not being exposed to hazardous chemicals. So it all ties together. But I think at that 30,000 foot level, if we just had to categorize it into most important things, emissions, human rights, traceability in our supply chain, those would be the things that I would lean into most heavily.
Definitely. Yeah. And you're right. It's no easy task. It's all three of those things plus all the others that could be listed. It all takes a huge amount of commitment and resources and money but I think it's so important, and so many conversations have focused on those three things. And I think there's just going to be so much more that we're going to learn about these three topics and more as time goes on. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and real quick, I want to jump on that, though, what you just said. I think this idea of unpacking it all that is the point. I mean, it is so complex, and we can try to narrow it down, but that's, I think, what we try to teach. And that's why there's training involved, because people can get overwhelmed, and I think rightly so, because we just can't look the other way, though, right? So it doesn't do us any good to just say, well, and here's a little admission. Early on in my career, I used to say, I handle environmental sustainability. And I would say that, right? Because it was easier just to deal with recycling and energy inputs and dealing with waste than it was to also look and see how that connected to people and societies and communities. Every decision has an impact on people as well. So even if you're dealing with waste, that has issues on communities and wherever you're putting your waste. Even if you're dealing with energy, with emissions, with pollution, with water use, with toxicity, hazardous chemicals, it has an impact on people somewhere. So there is no such thing as just environmental sustainability. So we have to be able to confront it all and look at it all together and just sort of own up to it and go, yep, there's our list of all the things that we've got to deal with. Let's start chipping away at them, because we're not going to get it all. And nobody will. And as I always say, there's no sort of easy switch, or we don't just get to go up, I'll turn a dial, and there we go. We did it. It's not that easy, unfortunately. I wish it were, but it's not.
Right. But who doesn't love a good challenge, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you for sharing a little bit about your career and some of the background with your experience in sustainable apparel. But I want to know more about your lifestyle. So like you said, you had often been called the sustainability expert. So I'm wondering, what has the Sabori family adopted for sustainable lifestyle? And what are some tips that you would like to give some of us listening and learning?
Yeah, what's funny is that was a big part, I think, of also what continued to excel me forward in this career path, was because as I learned, I also started to make changes in my life back then in the 2000s, right? So we were definitely adopting our green living, practices. And the more I did that, the more people would say, oh my gosh, how did you do that? What was it like? Tell me more about composting, or you installed solar panels, and this was early on. Today, it's much easier to do. But I think we did our first set, I think in 2008, 2009. We bought an old Mercedes diesel wagon. I converted it to vegetable oil, so we were driving a veggie car for a while. Really trying to promote carpooling and beach cleanups, and just sort of getting people involved that would take them to the eco centers and just sort of introduce everybody to these more green ways of living. Even back then, it was so funny because even drinking out of a reusable water, canteen, a hydro flask or whatever it might be, was just like, wow, that's wild, So of course doing all those. So I think, at home, composting, We used to do a lot of gardening. Admittedly, we don't do a whole lot now, but still composting. Couple sets of arrays of solar, handful. We just got our first EV, which is great. Hopefully we're getting another one soon, because this one will go to my daughter. And we've got our electric bikes, and we've been biking a lot. So I spent the whole summer, mostly instead of driving down to go surfing, I rode my bike down to go surfing, which was awesome. And I think one of the hacks that I love, in our house too, we've got the kitchen backsplash people really love in our house, because it's made of recycled skate decks. So there's this cool, there's all these really colorful tiles, but when you look at them, you're like, oh my gosh, those are skateboard decks. They're used skateboard decks. So, we've tried to incorporate whenever we can buy FSC certified wood, try to avoid plastic, etc. But we are not perfect, that's for sure. But we do try. And if we're going to, our sheets, our new mattress, it's an avocado mattress. We're always trying to make the most informed and best decision, and to be an informed consumer. I think probably one of the biggest things, though, is food waste. We are really good here at buying to a menu and buying to a menu that fits our family. There is very little food waste in our house. And I think this is something that people can get really good at. My wife plans out a menu. We'll all work on it together. She makes these binders. But either way, hey, what's for dinner? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, etc. And then, boom, you go buy to that. And you buy for your 1, 2, 4, or 5 people. And that way there shouldn't be any waste. And then what we do is we usually save one day of the week at least for what we call a mashup. And that's wherever the leftovers are. Boom, we make this little feast of all the leftovers, and it's amazing. We waste so little food, and that's a really big deal, because food waste agriculture is one of our biggest, greenhouse gas sectors. So things like that we can do, right? And the less food we waste, the less water we're wasting, the less fuel that's used, and chemicals, etc. So that's one I like. Of course, we've always, bring your own bag and only use reusable containers. If you're a parent, anybody out there, my wife was always really good at getting her school. She had this big tub, and for all the school parties, she would always bring reusable plates, cups, napkins, everything. She would wash them, bring them, have the party, take them back, wash them again, instead of using disposables and plastics. So just really trying to inform other people. So we've always sort of been, sort of like the the weird ones, like, oh, here come the Saboris with their reusable napkins. But then eventually people catch on, and then before you know it, everybody's doing it. So it's not so weird anymore. But we just do, we try our best. But I'm not one to judge. I definitely, because I know you can easily walk in here like, oh, well, wait a minute, what about that? Or what about your MacBook? Oh, what about your, it's like, yeah, but there are things that we can all do in our lives to really do a better job. My kids take long showers, and that's a hard thing to deal with. It's like, because they're teenagers, so yeah. We're always yelling at them, but so we try to offset it all along the way.
Yeah. Well, and I get that. I mean, you're in Orange County. That's where I grew up. I know water is super hard down there. It's really hard to try and cut back with how strict restrictions can be, and especially being a teenager. I've been there before, not that long ago. And with the food waste, this is kind of like a great time for us to be talking about this, because the holidays are coming up. Here in America, we're going to have Thanksgiving in just a few weeks. So I guess maybe kind of like a quick little question. Thanksgiving, does your family do anything special for Thanksgiving, since it is a food-centered holiday, or anything holiday related maybe that's like a sustainability?
My wife decorates for every holiday. She loves just decorating the house. We have always, ever since the kids were little, and so now she just still does. So the house is always decorated, it's super festive, and she cooks this great, an amazing feast for us. I'm a mostly plant-based diet, so we've always got mostly, plant-based, and then she'll still do her meats or other things for any other family that join us. But yeah, just sitting down and having dinner together is a really important thing for us in our family. Mm-hmm. So it's this idea of coming together, really being grateful for the year that has passed, and making plans for the future year. So I'm always just looking forward to sitting down. The end of the year always means like, okay, we put in all the hard work. This is what we've got. This is where we're at. And let's just ride out these next few weeks until we, hop back in January. So I'm really looking forward to that rest time, coming together with family, having good conversations, and enjoying good food. And I wish I could flip the script so that my wife, so that I could cook, but she won't let anybody. She's so good at it, and that's what she does. So yeah, just I think just the meal in itself is sort of our, our holiday and our joy.
Awesome. Yeah, no, and that's so good to hear. It's so nice, to just have that time. I think, again, with the work being in sustainability, it can be so overwhelming and sometimes it can be so heavy and, there's always something new coming out. So it's nice to have that family time to just kind of center yourself and maybe realign and calm down and think and breathe. And so that's awesome to hear that that's how you guys are going to be celebrating.
Yeah, not only that, if I can, I want to add to that because, it's not only the sustainability work that's challenging, but also being an entrepreneur and being self-employed, and being scrappy like we have to be. That's also, hats off now to anybody who's doing something on their own, self-employed, going for it, being an independent contractor, whatever it is, because there's stress that comes out along with that as well, because we have to do the content, we have to do the advertising, we have to do the sales, we got to do the book. So it's, there's stress in that too, and it never rests. So yes, it's like there's like a double whammy of self-employed in sustainability. I don't know what I was asking for. That's a lot, but
well, yeah, and we talked about it earlier, but we love a good challenge. So I think we're kind of like a glutton for pain, I guess.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Beautiful. So then I guess next question, talking about work, I'm wondering what's some advice that you would give to people who are looking to start a career in sustainability or sustainable apparel, maybe people who are looking for career change or recent college graduates?
Yeah, I think really it is because so few. So I even, I do a lot with my alma mater with UC Irvine, and we hosted students here at our house the other night for dinner. And that was, something that they were asking. A lot of them were in environmental sciences or like urban planning, and they're in these great sustainability fields. But what we're trying to do here is really connect brands and companies who are doing things and making things. And I'm really passionate about working with brands. So you can get a degree and kind of go down the policy and research and science side, which is amazing. But that's not for everybody, right? I know that wasn't for me. I actually like the marketing and sales side, but I'm also not a marketer or a salesperson. So I'm sort of like, gosh, I'm right in between. So I really like what we do. So if you resonate with that, then I think it's important you've got some extra work cut out for you, because you have to learn the language. You have to learn about on the science speak, ecosystem services, biodiversity, and natural resources and natural capital, and all of these things that you didn't learn in your marketing or any, what other pathway you took for school. So you've got to kind of get out there and educate yourself on that, learn what the SDGs are, et cetera, what the history of the United Nations, et cetera, learn all of that work. But then also learn the language of the business that you want to be in. I had such a unique upbringing, I think, because I was able to be deep in the mix of a company that was then acquired by a bigger company. We did all of our production domestically for so long, so I had my hands on buying trims, buying fabric, going to the cut house, going to the dye house, going to the wash house, going to the, to the sewer and watching it all, and then doing overseas manufacturing. So I got to learn the language of it. I worked through different departments, sales operations, design, merchandising, planning and analysis. I got to work on the executive floor. So I had a good lay of how it all works, and I had a good understanding that was developing of the sciences. And I guess I was, never an expert necessarily in either one, because I just had to play the middle person, but it's kind of a tough role. So you've got to, I think, learn the language and learn the business. Those are the two biggest things, so that you can go somewhere and say, hey, I understand sustainability and I understand the needs of this company. I can help. I can drive this forward and help push sustainability. So I think those would be the recommendations I would have.
Definitely, yeah. And I think that that's great because there's so many people, like we know, most of the time someone's career or even their school journey isn't just a linear path. It kind of weaves. And I know I was in the same boat. So I think people eventually find their way, but it's just everyone has a different path. So that's great to hear that there's kind of a few different options that people can follow if they want to really get involved with this, no matter what their role or their department or, their age even. So that's great to hear. And then looking forward as well, what's one sustainability goal you would like to achieve?
I think really it's almost a play on the word, right? I think to build a sustainable business model, to make sure that that the Underswell is around for the next 5 or 10 years, that we've had an impact on the industry, and that people recognize what we've set out to do, and that they're taking advantage of it, that they're coming on board, that they're learning with us. So if I can look back and know that, hey, over this last year, we have seen an uptick in people coming on as members. They're learning, they're making progress through our content, they're signing up for our course, they're getting engaged. I know that we're changing culture, because I've watched too many students go through the program who are changed forever. I know they are. I've watched it, and I've heard them tell me the same, because I went through the same transformation. We all do. And so there's nothing that makes me more proud than just kind of going, yep, there goes another one. That person's going to go do some new work in their organization. So like that to me is the goal, is the constant flip over, that constant spark that we can set. It's like, we'll go light another little fire. We'll light another one over there. So I think it's just being, making sure the business is survives and can thrive and can really create the change that we set out to do, and flip that funnel that I talked about, right? I really want to make it so that the norm is that everybody is receiving the sustainability insights and knowledge, and not just the experts anymore. So if we can help, kind of flip that funnel or flip that script, then that'll make me happy as well.
Definitely. Yeah. And I love hearing, I mean, we've gotten emails from students before saying how much they enjoyed the course, or how much they appreciated learning about sustainability through our programs. And it really is so cool to just have this almost like a little tribe, we have this little crew, and it's, we're like-minded people. And even though we may be in different parts of the world or doing different roles at different companies, we kind of have this common thread amongst all of us. So I think that that's really great that you want to keep that going. And, I'm right there with you, with you along for the ride. So yeah, it's like sparks even more fire. I think people hearing your passion ignites their passions. So, and with that,
I hope so. We're all in it together. We all got to do it together. We all got to support. We all have to support each other.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's like it's a perfect little community of all of us coming together and trying to solve one problem at a time, or at least make the world a little bit of a better place. So, with that too, so 2023 is basically right around the corner. What's your vision for the Underswell following 2023 and beyond?
I guess my vision is, maybe because I could have said, I guess your question about, a sustainability goal obviously is going back on that previous question, is one that we have to reduce emissions. So whatever we can do to drive down emissions, to be in line with what science has, suggested or to us, that has to be the goal, right? We have to reduce emissions throughout our value chains and really get on this path to net zero. How optimistic am I about it? I don't know at this point, but we have to keep pushing. So I guess because I think that's an important sustainability goal, but it's, this idea of the vision going forward is similar to what I just answered: sustainable business model, flipping the funnel. But I also think making the Underswell sort of this one place, and you mentioned community, and to make it a thriving community that has a lot of members, a lot of involvement. We're seeing in-person events, we're gathering, we're doing virtual meetups, and we are supporting each other and really starting to make a difference inside of organizations and changing cultures in companies and brands and retailers. I think there's a big opportunity to reach, even people working on the retail floor. That seems to be a team that often is like, well, they may or may not get the training. They'll get sales training. They need sustainability training. The distribution center, they need sales training. Everybody does. So if we can play a role there, that'd be amazing. I would love to get a B Corp certification for the Underswell. That can be something we will do. But just being known as the one place, I think would be really exciting to me. And that's sort of the vision I have, is just to, grow and create a thriving community for our members and be known as a destination that really supports people on their path to doing more for sustainability and climate action in our industry.
Yeah, that's so exciting. And it's like I said, it really ignites my passion being along with you on this journey and following you and seeing your leadership. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be a part of this and to keep moving forward. So yeah, all of your answers today have just been so enlightening and kind of, I got to know a little bit more about your journey, and I got to learn a little bit more about why you're so passionate about sustainability. And also, I have to give you credit for being so positive. There's so many people in our space where it's like, oh gosh, like it just weighs so heavy on them that it's hard to stay positive. So I really do appreciate your positivity, as I'm sure all of our students appreciate how positive and optimistic you are. So yeah, thank you for answering these questions. But was there anything else that you wanted to add before we sign off?
No, just to thank you. Thanks for doing that, McKenzie. Thanks for all the kind words. And I will say one thing that I'll end with too. You had asked about lifestyle tips, and one thing that I remember as I'm looking at my camera here, it's also a matter of like one thing that people can do as well. Buy things that you love, that that you can stick with, and use them for as long as possible. Take good care of your stuff. It's one of the biggest things we can do is just buy and hold on to it and get good use out of it. So I think that's a really important lesson and another good tip. So that's one thing I forgot to mention that I wanted to, is just buying good stuff, holding on to it, and getting a lot of use out of it. Because that, regardless of how it was made or where it was made or what it's made of, the longer you stretch that out, the lighter the footprint eventually. So no, that's it. And thank you very much. And thanks to anybody who stuck with us to watch this all the way through. We so appreciate having you on board, and we appreciate you guys just being along on this journey with us. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.